you're still at Muscat. You've been there a long time, haven't you, Carl? So I've been there 8 years. This is my 9th year, and I guess for an international head, that can be quite a long time. So if you believe the data that people band about out there, that the average length of tenure for an international school principal is either 18 months or 3 years, depending on what you believe. So I guess at 8 years, then that might sound like a long time. I think I'm only just getting going, really. The first 3 years was hell. Had a very substantial in-tray, which I think is quite often the case when you take a leadership position, and so I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that. And that happens for all sorts of reasons, but I don't think that's unusual. The school had many strengths when I arrived, and it also had some serious problems which needed tackling. And I guess you always have problems as a school leader that you have to deal with. And that's one of the reasons that school needs leaders to sort out the problems and help carve out the path for the future. But in my 9th year, and I think, so I'm only just about starting now to get going, and I've still got a lot that I would really like to do, and I feel I've got a huge amount to learn. And what I'm going to really want to open up a discussion this morning is about leadership, and something which I'm calling authentic leadership. I've been thinking about this for quite a few years. So this presentation, this workshop, is based on my time at Muscat and before that. But I guess more recently, maybe the last 3 to 4 years, I've been thinking how I would articulate what I think is, what is it about leadership that actually really matters. And I'm a bit of a thinker. That's one of the things that identifies me as a leader. So I've been thinking a lot about leadership. And so we might call this authentic leadership, and you can research authentic leadership on the internet, and you'll see it's a fairly immature concept. So it's authentic leadership. You can read some about there. There's 1 or 2 books about it. There's been some work done on it, but it's a developing philosophy or approach to leadership. So we're not saying this is authentic leadership, this is how you do it. It's really, for me, it's just a way of thinking about maybe the things that really matter, that make a difference in how we might lead our schools. But I want to discuss things. I want to open up a discussion. I like discussion. I hate it if I'm standing here and I'm talking to you for 10 minutes and you haven't said anything. I guess that's the teacher that's still very much in me. So, let's start the discussion. So, let's start relatively easy, I think. So let's just work out who we are looking at, first of all. I guess everybody knows the person on the left. Yeah, just shout out.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. So, is she a leader?
Yes.
What's she a leader of? She wants to be a leader. Could she be the first leader of the US, maybe? She wants to be a leader. She's been the first lady. Is that a bit of a sexist term? Would you accept that? She was the first lady of the US for 8 years, I think 93 to 2000.
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, very good. Okay, so she had a leadership position in her own right as well. Very good, let's move along then. Do you all recognise this young leader? Yes? She is Malala, yeah, and she's led what? What has she led in at a very early stage in her life? She's led a crusade for girls in school of women's education, and took real risks, shot in the head, for what she was trying to lead. Okay, and then we move along, and who do we get to there? Opera. Is she a leader? She's a leader. What's she a leader of? Everything. She's a leader of everything. Okay. Can anybody more specific? She's a leader of everything. Yes. Goodwill. Leader of goodwill. That's a great thing to be a leader of. Okay. So 3 female leaders at different stages of their life. Let's move on to some old guys from a different part of history. So again, starting on the left, do you recognise this guy?
Winston
Churchill, leader of Britain during the Second World War, and then was very shortly after that not re-elected, so he led Britain through quite a difficult period, very difficult period, and then people didn't want him anymore. Guy in the middle, Roosevelt. What do you know about Roosevelt?
President of the United States.
President of the United States. Up there with Lincoln and George Washington, possibly. Down history as one of the great 3 presidents of the US. Would you agree with that? You think so? Anything else you know about Roosevelt? The New Deal led the US through a very difficult time in the 1930s. Yeah, led the US into the Second World War. And here's a conference in Yalta in Iran, where you've got Churchill on the left, Roosevelt in the middle, and who's the guy on the right?
Stalin.
Stalin. Right, okay. Who was the leader of the Soviet Union at that time? Okay. So that's 6 leaders we've identified so far. So our 7th leader, you know it? Mother Teresa. She's famous for saying lots of things. Patient heart that listens. And if you have a patient heart that listens when you're a leader, you're going to come back to that in a moment. And then this guy, Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. That's quite a well-known quote, things are not. Okay. Right, so let's start to think about well-known leaders from the past and also from the present. So, what do we mean by authentic leadership? Well, here's a definition that we could use at this part of the presentation. So, a leadership style that is consistent with a leader's personality and core values, and is honest and ethical and practical. So that's the first bit there. The authentic leadership is about you. Is about you being yourself, about what you think and what you say and what you do are consistent. That's one way of interpreting that first bit. There's honest, there's ethical and practical. Right, you've all been sitting down for far too long now, so let's get up on our feet. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to form a line along the front of the stage, because you're going to feel quite happy at this front here. So you're going to form a line, and I'd like you to order yourselves in the following way. If you've been in international education like 1 year, you'd be here. If you've been in international education for more than 30 years, you'd be at this end. So I'd like to line yourselves up and a grading of how long you've been in international education. So you're going to have to talk to each other to find that out. Right, so let's get a line, let's sort ourselves out. Come on, let's get a move. So short time without any long time. 1 month, education. And next year?
6 months.
6 months. Welcome to your first year. And next? 1 year. Very good. Okay, then we move along. So where are we here? 7, 8, 7, 6, 7, 8. 18 already. Ooh. 20. Then we're going to see where's the 20 mark? Round about here. 20 and then 25. 30. 30. 31 years international education. And she's looking really good. Brilliant. Okay, so let's go back to our leaders then. Now, let's go. Before we go to our leaders, let's go back to our definition. So if that's our definition, let's just our working definition for the moment. So think about consistent leaders' personality, core values, honest, ethical, practical. Right now, I want you to stand where you think these different leaders are in terms of their authentic leadership. So let's start off with Hillary Clinton. If you think Hillary Clinton is a really strong authentic leader, go down there. Strong authenticity. Low authenticity down here. So where would you put, so I'm asking you to put your cards on your chest, literally. Hillary, if you think she's really strong authentic there, if you're very weak there, if you're not sure, stand in the middle. Not sure in the middle, strong, weak. wonder why you are saying that. Why did you say that?
Me personally?
Yes.
Just because of the stance in what she believed in, regardless of the cost, and the repercussions that came to her personally.
Okay.
So she stood firm in her beliefs for everything.
Yeah, and the fact that she nearly got killed standing what she
Correct.
believed in, that gives a real sense of authenticity. Okay, very good. And opera? You going to stay where you are, or are you going to rearrange yourselves for opera? Nobody thinks she's fake? She's just a bit of it now? She's the money maker. Oh, she's the money maker. You're not so sure how authentic she is. You're not sure about what her motives are. But you're standing alone there with that. Oh, you're sure they're going to give it a Okay. So what, are you going to change your position at all for Winston Churchill? Similar to opera? Don't know. Franklin Roosevelt? Do we know? Are we sure? You seem to know a lot about Franklin Roosevelt, the young man.
I do.
Do you think he was an authentic leader?
He was indeed, even though he was a politician.
Even though he was a politician.
Because there is a difference between being a politician and being a leader.
Yeah, but he did come in for some criticism, though, did he not?
It did.
Yeah, but that that doesn't challenge his authenticity in your perception.
Absolutely not.
Okay, and Stalin. Everybody's staying where they are. No movement. You want to go that way? You go over there. Come on, let's. Hopefully, we're starting to think a little bit now about what does it really mean to be an authentic leader? Why are we, as a group, Malala, Mother Teresa, Gandhi seems pretty strong in our perception. With the values, some values. Okay, some other values and what they stand for. Okay, so Stephen Tierney, anybody know Stephen Tierney? Stephen Tierney is a CEO of a MAT in the UK, Blackpool. He's not there for much longer. He's leaving that job at the end of this year. He's got 27,000 followers on Twitter, so he's one of the most popular. He's in the 10 most popular educators in the UK on Twitter. And I first met Stephen back in 2006 on a very cold January morning near his school in Blackpool at a conference a bit like this. And I was hosting the workshop, and we were trying to work with teachers in Blackpool and that surrounding area we were trying to discuss how to develop the education in our schools so it was more personalised for our students. And Stephen immediately struck me as what I think is an authentic leader. He was quite vocal in our workshop. He challenged the thinking very clearly and in a very articulate way, but he was coming very much from it all the time. Not about him, but it was about his students in his school and his staff and his community. And he argued quite forcibly, but also quite constructively. But you could just feel the passion and the care that he had for his students and his staff as he was in his workshop. And Stephen was already ahead back there in 2006. Stephen had been ahead since 2002, and he's about my age. I became ahead in 2011, so I was a bit behind Stephen. Stephen is still ahead in 2019, but he's going to be retiring from this post, which he's been there for nearly 20 years, at the end of this term. And when I found out about this in April, I was actually quite sad and disappointed, because somebody who I felt had far more energy than me and a huge amount of commitment and is a highly respected school leader in the UK was choosing to bow out of school leadership in his, still when he had quite a lot of years left to offer the education system. And I was in communication with Stephen around about April when I was writing an article about authentic leadership, which you may well have seen in the Times Ed a couple of weeks ago. Because my original version of that article had this story about Stephen in it, but they decided to edit it out. And I was telling the story in the article how I met Stephen and how I thought for me he was an authentic leader. But at the end of the article, I also said how sad I was that he was leaving the profession when I felt he still had a lot to offer the profession. When I asked him about why he was leaving, yes, there were some issues with his personal situation, but he was also finding it increasingly challenging to be, he didn't use language, but to be an authentic leader in an education system where he was struggling to recruit staff, where he was struggling with his budget, where he had real issues with the accountability system. Yeah, he was really finding it difficult to continue to be the leader he wanted to be with the pressures that he was facing. So I think that's sad, and I think you're probably all aware, those of us who are connected with the UK, that a lot of teachers are leaving because of those sorts of reasons. That can they really be the teacher they want to be? Can they be the head teacher they want to be when so much is not aligned with their core values? And I think there's something in there about authentic leadership as well. That if what you say and what you think and what you say and what you do, if those are not aligned, that can cause a lot of inner conflict within you. And you can live with that, and you can be incredibly resilient and continue with that. Or you can be, or you can be miserable, or you can maybe go and find your happiness elsewhere. Okay, so why should we be interested in authentic leadership? Well, apparently, a lot of research out there says that people in our schools, they want change. They do want things to be better. They want to be led to a better place, but they don't want to be changed. They don't want us to go in and say, right, we're doing this next week, without being involved in that change. So they want the change, they want to be involved in that change, they don't want to be changed. They don't want to have change done to them. We'll come back to that. People want to be led by somebody real. There's a lot of stuff written about fake news. People don't like fake news, people don't like fake people. So people want to be led by somebody real. And we probably all think we're very real people. But one of the issues with authentic leadership is, however authentic we might feel we are, how do we behave in such a way that our followers feel that authenticity? It's not just enough to be authentic yourself. We've all made perceptions and decisions about Malala and Gandhi and Mother Teresa because we feel they're authentic leaders. So how do we get our colleagues and our community to feel that we are authentic leaders? Because if there is a deep trust of leaders, and that's not unusual, if people don't trust us, if they feel we're fake, if they don't feel authentic, are they going to go with us on our journey? Or are they going to continue blocking it? And if we lead in a way which we could call authentic leadership, those behaviours, which we'll start to look at shortly, those behaviours do help to build trust. And if you have trust in your school, in your organisation, there's much more likelihood that then you'll become a high-performing team, a high-performing school, and you'll do the best for your students. So what do we need to do more of? What do we need to think about if we want to be better as authentic leaders? So thinking about this goes back a long way. Shakespeare over 400 years ago, it's a very famous quote from Hamlet. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou cannot then be false to any man. So if you are true to yourself, then you won't come across as fake. Is it as simple as that? There's quite a lot of different interpretations of that famous quote. But Shakespeare was talking about this over 400 years ago. More recently, Gandhi, who we talked about, he said the definition of happiness is that when what you think and what you say and what you do are in harmony, then that is happiness. And most days at British School Muscat, I think that what I think and what I say and what I do are in harmony. But that's only part of it. My colleagues are going to feel that too. But I do feel, probably like Stephen Turney, if I was leading a school in the UK, I wouldn't feel like that. What I thought and what I say and what I did would not be in harmony. There would be a conflict. That's why I'm probably leading an international school. So, to thine own self be true, That's the starting point, really, of authentic leadership. How well do you know yourself so you can be true to yourself? Are you true to yourself? Are you an authentic leader? Okay? So I'm going to ask you to be courageous, and Lisa has asked us to be courageous. She also asked me to make this workshop interactive. So a chance for you to do some more activity now. So what I've been developing over the recent years is this little self-evaluation tool, which I've used with my leadership team. I've also used it on the Codeless program for aspiring head teachers. So it's not the first time I've used it, but we're developing it as we go along. And we've got 3 wheels to help you self-reflect. What type of leader are you part 1? What type of leader are you part 2? What type of leader are you part 3? And I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, and that's usually about enough time, for each of the questions on the wheel. So on what type of leader are you part 1, you start at the top of the wheel or top of the clock. There's the first question then. And I'd like you to think about that question, but not too much, because this is quite subjective, and you could think about this a lot, but you can do that when you get back home or back to school. So how well do you know your strengths and limitations? And what I want you to do is to score your response on that from 0 to 10. So if you think you're pretty confident that you know what your strengths are, and you know what your limitations are, you might score that 9 or 10. If you say, well, I'm not sure at all what my strengths and limitations are, you might score that maybe 1, 2 or 3 on the scale. Then you move around to the right, going around clockwise. How well do you know what is unique about you? What's your unique selling point? If you think you know that very strongly, you'd put a 10. If you're not sure about that at all, you'd put a 0. If it's somewhere between, you might put a 5. So but you need to write the number, and you'll see why in a moment. You need to write the number on the space. If you think it's 10, write 10 there. If you think it's 5, write 5. If you think it's 0, write 0. And then you move around the space again. To what extent do you act publicly as you do in private? Again, you score 0 to 10. So you work your way around the first wheel, you then work your way around the second wheel, and then you work your way around the third wheel. And this is self-reflection. I am not going to ask anybody to disclose what their specific responses are to these questions. So you're not going to be checked on. This is just a tool to help you think about where you are. So you've got 3 wheels, and I'll give you about 10 minutes to have a go at working through it. And it's a summary of a number of Shakespeare plays, which all tell stories of tyrants. And the author, Stephen Greenblatt of Tyrant, has done research on the Shakespeare plays and identified the behaviours of tyrants, which is what we're trying to avoid. Because probably tyrants are one end of the spectrum and authentic leaders are the other end of the spectrum. So I've tried to rephrase the behaviours of tyrants, which are negative, and phrase those that construct those more positive behaviours. So it's academic research has informed this, Shakespeare has informed this, and some of my own experience has informed this. So, we're ready to work out where you are. Yeah, ready for the reveal? Nervous? Nervous. Let's see where you are then. Okay, so I said, but maybe what I didn't make clear was I said, we're not going to create a league table. The idea of going through this self-reflection exercise is to think what areas are you stronger on, and then what areas may you need to do some quite substantial development on. And there's an interesting debate around professional development. Well, I've heard Professor Dylan Williams talk about a few times. And it's not only just for ourselves to think about this, but also with our teachers. Should we work on things that we're quite good at, and focus on those things so we're even better at those things? Or should we focus on things that we're really rubbish at and trying to get better at them? Yeah, and there'll be different philosophies around that, and maybe it's a bit of both. But there's certainly nothing wrong, I don't think, if you are pretty good at something, why shouldn't you focus on becoming even better? But if you've got some blind spots, if you think there's scope in spending some time becoming better, then maybe it is also worth some attention there too. Okay, so you've now got some sense of where you are as an authentic leader and where you might want to develop some of your behaviours. Let's just delve into 5 of those areas just to illustrate a little bit what the research says, what it might mean in practice. So how well do you know your strengths, your limitations, and what's unique about you? Well, the research into authentic leadership suggests that leaders really have to work very hard at understanding and developing themselves, and it never stops. Working out who you are and how you can develop. And then how well do you capitalise on your USP? It's like Charlotte was saying. Yeah, she had a pretty clear view, didn't she, of what she was good at and what she wasn't good at. She wasn't any good at spreadsheets, so you've got something else to do there. Why waste time on something which is going to somebody else can do much better? And maybe she's then focused on other things where she can get even better at it. So how well do you understand yourself? And that's why, I think it's probably quite hard. Not impossible, it's quite hard to lead a school when you're in your 20s. And it's probably a bit easier to lead a school when you're in your 40s or older, because you're just a bit more comfortable about who you are and know yourself a bit more. Because that's important. I'm a bit of a thinker. And I only really sort of worked it out when somebody said to me a few years ago, you're a bit of a thinker. And then a few months ago, you're a bit of a thinker. So if I'm a thinker, I might make sure I'm giving myself enough time to think about things that need thinking about. Right, secondly, do you act publicly as you do in private? And this is quite, I find this a really interesting one, because there's not a simple answer to this, there's not a simple answer to a lot of these. But displaying your vulnerabilities to your followers shows approachability and humanity. And there's been quite a lot written about, if you want to build trust with your followers and with your team, you have to show vulnerability. And so you do need to find common ground with followers so they can relate to you on a personal basis. But then here's the difficult bit. Some self-disclosure is vital, but if you disclose too much about yourself, you'll be seen as narcissistic. You're always going on about me. If you every time you stand up in front of an assembly you talk about your children and your family, you could be seen as narcissistic. But if you don't disclose anything about yourself, people will find you distant, detached, disinterested. So find the balance. There's a professional judgment there. So these are all things about me. But did I go into my school when I started and say, well, I really like music, and so I'm going to start playing the guitar in assembly? No, it took me 5 years before I stood up in a school event and played the guitar. Did I tell them that I used to play cricket? No. Did I tell them that I actually played rugby? And if I showed them a picture of the rugby team, there was a picture of me as a substitute rugby team, and I had the honour of being the 3rd team rugby captain when I went to the 6th form, and the first game we lost 98-0, the next game we lost 60-0, and the third game we lost 30-0, and that was progress. And I learned a lot about leadership, but I didn't tell that. I don't think I've shared that with my school at all at the moment. Have I shared with them up until very recently that my parents used to take me to the Yorkshire Dales, the Lake District, and therefore my love of geography emerged, and I still love playing mountains? Probably not. They can see that I quite like playing football. You can see the guy on the left in the Arsenal. I don't support Arsenal, I support Leicester. That's the Leicester thing probably came out a bit earlier. Quite a few of the staff kept chatting about football. That's not a bad thing. Have I told them that I grew up with punk rock and new wave, the Jam, the Clash? So they're actually quite a rebel in me, and I want to change the world still? No, haven't really told them that. They might sense that. But that's a big part of my psychology, is I do want to change the world. That's why I'm in education. And I am a bit of a rebel. But do I want to tell my staff that I'm a bit of a rebel? Not when I first walk into the door, but I am a bit of a rebel. In some ways, conservative rebel. So there's stuff which they will find out about me as I've gone through my leadership, but I didn't offload this like I am to you on the first week or first assembly, who am I? So I guess it's finding the right time, and but all these things do help me connect with my staff. I do talk to a lot of my staff about football. I do talk to a lot of my staff about exploring around Oman and the world. I do talk to a lot of my staff about music. And the fact that I play football, I used to, until 2 years ago, I used to play football in the staff team. those things I think will probably helped me connect with my staff. We have to choose the right moment. I had a very bad stammer as an adolescent. I still stammer occasionally, but it was 5 years into my headship that I was actually prepared to tell the students about that in an assembly once. And I was really worried, I was slowly worried that was a bit self-indulgent, but they seemed to quite like it. Okay, so how much you disclose about yourself, you have to think about that. This I think is really important, and where you can, I think your followers will really see this very quickly. Do you walk the talk? Do you practice what you preach? Or do you walk the talk with a limp? Yeah, so there seems to have integrity, which is a part of it, authentically. Your words must match your deeds. One of the mistakes I made wasn't introducing Google, but when I started 8 years ago, we introduced quite an ambitious professional development program, professional learning communities, the Dylan Williams that inspired idea of associated with assessment for learning. Oh yeah, let's do professional learning, that's great. Yeah, you do it, you lead it, get on with it, no problem. And then within 2 months, if not sooner, the staff were not happy because they said, well, if Kai thinks it's so important, why is he doing this with it? And I had that big intro stuff, and I didn't feel that at the time. But then that program fell flat on its face, at least partly because I wasn't showing my commitment. Even though I felt I was really committed to it, my staff didn't see it or feel it. So we introduced G Suite last December, and then we thought 8 months later we might actually train the staff. That worked out quite a good way of doing it. We fumbled our way through it for 8 months, and then we actually got the training. We actually learned probably far more from the training than we would have if we had at the start. Anyway, that's just the story with it. But there we are. We had 5 days of training in August. We came back to school, and I just assumed that I would sit there for a day, and I also needed the training. But the number of staff who came to me on that day said, "Are you doing this training? Are you doing this all day?" I said, "Yeah, I am." "Oh, wow. Oh, right, yeah." So they're quite surprised. So I think, just one example is, and there's quite a lot of research out there about good leadership. Learning alongside our colleagues is actually potentially quite a powerful thing, and it's a good thing to do because you see them in a different light, they see you different light. You start seeing your colleagues in a class of 40. That's quite interesting to see how they are as learners, not just as teachers. But it's really important that they see that you're not this person who's in an office and you're above everything. Yes. Time. Five. Thank you. Okay. Fourthly, do you care about your colleagues and their work, your shared mission, and are you happy to lead them? And I think that is, do they feel that you care about their work? Do they feel it? And are you happy? There's quite a lot of research about that, about the happy leader. The leader who goes around with a smile on their face around the school apparently makes a massive impact on our schools. If we go around with a grumpy face, or we don't even go around at all, they don't see our face, that's an issue for the people in our school. But if we go around smiling, and you might say, well, that's not authentic, what if I'm really hacked off? Yeah, but they need that. So I'm not always good at smiling. And when my daughter was in school, she's now left now, she's on University of London. But if I was walking around school and she caught me, and she'd go, Dad, stop frowning, smile. And your daughter can say that to you, your head of science probably less keen to say that to you. But the power of the smile, there's research out there, it really makes a difference. If you go around every day and you're smiling, and smiling to the kids, smiling to the parents, smiling to the staff, that makes a difference to them. And actually, if you say hello and call them, use their name, that makes a difference to them. And so one of the things I've done to do that, and I've learned this from other colleagues, is if you're going to walk around school, and I think it is really important, the only way to do that, because we've all got very busy schedules, you need to block it into your diary. And in my diary, you see 3 times a day it says MBWA. Management by walking about. It's in my diary. It's 7 o'clock to 7:45. 9:30 to 10:15, 1:30 to 2:15. 3 times a day, it's in my diary. Unless there's an absolute crisis, my personal assistant will keep those times free. And I would get out of my chair if I'm already not, and I would walk around the school. And it's amazing every time you do that, how many little problems or conversations you have, which you didn't intend to have, you have when you actually solve probably maybe quite small problems when they're still small. And you smile. Okay, and so tough and impressive empathy is key to authenticity. And so you can sidle up to that teacher who's a bit hacked off. And I understand you're going through a bit of a difficult time, we had a bit of a difficult situation yesterday, we're doing everything we can to help you. You can have those informed conversations. So that's your community. They want to see a smile. Okay, and finally, there's this interesting mixture. Charlotte referred to Jim Collins' Good to Great. It's a well-known business book. It's not about education, it's about leading organisations from good organisations to great organisations, based on a huge amount of research in the States that Jim Collins did in the late 90s. Good to Great, Jim Collins. And he identified the characteristics of leaders of organisations that have gone from good to great. And he found out from this research that what he called level 5 leadership. And what characterised the level 5 leadership is organisations that have gone from good to great. The leaders weren't charismatic, heroic leaders. They were leaders who had a combination of personal humility, but also a steely determination to do the right thing. And in other journals, that's referred as ambition. So humility and steely determination to do the right thing. And so I think a big way of how humility manifests itself, how do we show our humility? We are prepared to listen. We are prepared to listen to our colleagues, we are prepared to listen to our parents, to our students. We listen. Again, you read Sir Alex Ferguson, great football manager, you listen to the Dalai Lama, you read pretty much any strong leader, and they will talk about the importance of listening in leadership. And not just listening to understand, not listening just to respond. Listening to genuinely understand. So I could talk about how we listen to our entire community to redevelop our school. But maybe the final thing for you to think about, in your school, and this is not easy, has everyone got a voice, and how do you affect that? And if so, who is listening to those voices, and how are they listening? Thank you very much.